So the way I grew up, that is such a catchy two-letter word, huh? The way I grew up, forgiveness was something I never wanted to participate in. I grew up believing that somehow, if I was forgiving somebody, I was making what they did or said okay.
Say that again. There was kind of a stutter in there.
Okay.
But I don't think I'll be able to edit out.
Okay. The way I grew up, forgiveness was something I never wanted to participate in. Forgiveness seemed to me that it was going to make what the person said or did okay. And it was not okay. Just not okay with me. So I wasn't about to forgive them ever. And the interesting thing about resentment is that's what I'm carrying when I'm choosing not to forgive somebody for what they said or did, is I'm the one who's carrying the resentment. I'm the one who's holding it on that other person. I'm resenting them for what they said or did. I'm holding them as they're unforgivable. And when I learned that I'm the one who's generating my resentment, it's not what they did, but I'm the one who's carrying my resentment for them, and I can do something about it, I was all ears. I want to know more about that. And I found out that I can lay down my resentment for the other person. Doesn't mean what they did or said is okay. It just means I'm not going to carry the resentment anymore. And the crazy thing that happened was when I laid down my resentment, I had this space in here that I didn't feel before. And that space was love for everybody else. And I've come to find out since then that if you're carrying resentment, it's the only other thing that can occupy space in your heart. There's either love or there's resentment, and resentment uses up some of the space that could be available for loving everybody else.
So can I pause?
Yeah.
Right now you've gone through like 3 or 4 different topics.
Okay.
And that's the thing that gets really, really hard to edit.
Okay.
And I don't think you've hit the bullet point yet.
Okay. Thanks.
All good stuff, but
Yeah. So can I just start there? Start with the responsibility.
yeah. Or
Okay.
or go from the beginning,
Yeah.
and I'll maybe edit some of that in if it's relevant.
Okay. It took a while for me to understand that forgiveness was about laying down my resentment for the other person. It wasn't about the other person. And once I learned how to lay down my resentment for the other person, I'm the one who gets to feel better. So it's my responsibility to lay down my resentment for other people. It's not their responsibility to do something for me to make me feel better. It's my responsibility to lay down my resentment for the other person. It doesn't mean what they did or said is okay. It just means I'm not going to carry it anymore. And that can feel like a whole truck has been lifted off your shoulders. How's that?
Yes. Much more concise. Yeah, I had this growing feeling. I was listening, I'm like, oh, this is all good stuff, but it was getting more and more like dread, like, oh my god, how am I going to edit this? And then if you went over it again, the second take, how are you going to duplicate that same
Yeah.
list of topics? One of the things we tend to think about when we're talking about forgiveness is forgiveness is like a gift. Like, I am good enough that I will deign to forgive you for this thing you have done to wrong me, so kiss the royal ring and you will be forgiven. There's this kind of like superiority, like, I'm good enough that I'll let you be okay.
Mm.
But in my life, that is not helpful. That's not how I think about forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
I think about forgiveness as I am holding this thing that I don't like, and I'm carrying it around, dragging it after me, long after it's relevant. And forgiveness, then, for me, doesn't have anything to do with the other person anymore. Maybe it did in the moment, but now it's about letting go of my anger and resentment and maybe my sides of it, my guilt and remorse, or whatever it happens to be that's got that locked in there, and letting that go so I'm not carrying it around anymore. And compassion then is mostly doing that in the moment, where I recognize this thing they're doing, I don't like it, and going in the moment, do I want to react with this and cling to it and build a bunch of negativity off of it and carry that around, or I just want to go, you know what, I'm just going to forgive them right now for this thing and let go of my negative feelings about this because they're not helping me now. I don't want to keep on carrying them and have them not help me later too. Hit it one more time.
I think I already hit mine twice.
I don't know if you covered that the first time you went through it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
About the responsibility. It's my responsibility to lay it down.
Yeah.
I could add compassion in there and just say, one of the things I choose to live my life by is compassion. I want to experience more compassion. And it's hard to do that if I'm carrying resentment or not forgiving somebody, because it's not allowing me to feel that openness, love. It's not allowing me to feel open and lovable and compassionate. Because resentment is something that's my responsibility, not the other person's responsibility. It's my responsibility to lay it down because I'm the one who's carrying it. That person might have done something or said something that I don't like, but I'm the one carrying the resentment. So it's my responsibility to lay it down. And I actually have a practice now of laying down my resentment once I recognize it's there within 24 hours. Sometimes it'll be instantaneous, but if I'm not willing to do it right then, I'll do it within 24 hours. And the process of laying down my resentment for the other person, guess what? I get to feel like a truck's been lifted off my shoulders. And then I feel more open, loving, and compassionate.
Not that much more.
Okay.
The utility of forgiveness for me is in making my life easier. It's not me going to some person and going, I've decided that I shall forgive you out of the greatness of my being and the goodness of my heart and the nobility of my character. So,
Yeah,
yes,
that's icky.
you can be okay now in my esteem. It's not that. It's not even anything to do with that person anymore. Forgiveness is in the past. It's something that they did or that happened to me, but it might not have anything to do with them. That other person might be dead, but I might not have forgiven them. So it has nothing to do with them anymore for me. Instead, it's going, this thing isn't helping me. I'm going to let it go because I don't want to drag it on anymore. And compassion, then, the way I think about it that's helpful is forgiving in real time. So it's just letting go of those negative things that are coming up as they come up, instead of taking this negative stuff and I get to have it now, and I get to have it later too. What's the benefit of that? I'm going to take my poison now and make sure I save some of it so I can sip on it later. No, I just want to let it go. I'm just going to, in the moment, go, I have this negative thing going on. Do I want it? No, I'm just going to let it go so I can be more real with this person and probably more effective too in dealing with whatever this thing that they're doing that's unforgivable is, and not get caught up in it and not drag it after me.
That's good.
I'm
A utility.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is a utility.
I'm going to tell a quick story about it.
Yeah.
Because I thought of this. So I went to a wedding in Utah, and it was a Mormon wedding, so there was no alcohol. And there was a person there who was in AA, and they knew that these other relatives snuck in some alcohol. They had alcohol that they'd hidden in some, classy, they'd hidden them in these classy pop bottles. So they were drinking wine out of the pop bottles to hide at this wedding.
Hmm.
And the person who was in AA was telling me, like, a year later, I can't believe I was talking on the phone with them. The person from AA I was talking with on the phone. A year after the wedding, I was talking with this person from AA, and they were saying, and I can't believe that they brought that alcohol to the wedding, and it's a Mormon wedding, they shouldn't have it, and it was really hard for me knowing they were doing that. And I stopped him and I cut him off and I said, hold on a sec. They're the one that brought the alcohol to the wedding, but you're the one who's still carrying it around. So that's what resentment is. The thing happened, it's over and done, and then years later, months later, days later, decades later, you're still carrying around the weight of it.
I'm going to do the definition of resentment.
Okay.
My favorite definition of resentment is ill will held over a long period of time for good reason.
Okay, we should have plenty there.
Yep.